Three Kings subreddit to share our experiences following any kind of paranormal recipe or ritual, not just the Tiddler Three Kings. So we have been doing this podcast for a while. We stopped last week because it was Valentine's Day and we wanted a break. And frankly, we were busy. We had significant other people to do things with. But we're back this week, and what I think I would like to do this week is I want to go over the rituals index that we have here in the subreddit and start just chatting about them one by a time. And I have my best friend and co-host Dapper Jabber with me. How you doing, Dapper?
Doing great, up all night with a cup of coffee.
All right. Your microphone sounds way better. Is that a new microphone?
No, it's just the big mic. I have a pop filter on it.
Oh, okay.
Pull it up from under my desk because it takes up the entire screen. I can't play games with it, so
Well,
it's only for you.
you sound absolutely fine, my friend.
Oh,
So
we're doing In Peace S tonight, Spook Radio.
that's right. Yes. So let me give you to anybody who has never listened to this before. I'll give you the 30-second intro. So many years ago, I think 8 years ago, I posted a story in No Sleep about some experience that I had with rituals. It became called Three Kings. If you search for Three Kings ritual in Google, there is a lot of stuff that has come out as a result of that. Apparently, somebody put it here on Creepypasta. It's just a dangerous game. What? Just a game or dangerous spiritual? The scariest kids game ever. Three Kings Ritual at 3 a.m. because of course, why not? The most dangerous games. So a lot of things came out of it, and how many results do we have here? We have a lot of results, and a lot of things that came out became this subreddit where other people started saying, "Hey, I had this experience too, right? This also happened to me. I followed this ritual or that ritual. We call them recipes sometimes, and my intention is not to just do rituals for ritual's sake. Actually, what I'm trying to do is to get people to develop a higher understanding of whatever is out there, right? I mean, maybe this world is not all there is. Maybe there are other things in this world that would be worth exploring, and they seem paranormal to us right now. They seem like we don't have an answer for them. But if we explore them enough, then maybe we'll discover that one day they're just they're no more paranormal than things that today's science takes for granted, right? So the weather for the longest time used to be thought of as the whim of the gods. Now we understand there is a whole science of climatology behind it. So who knows? Maybe 100 years from now, paranormal experiments will be perfectly explainable, and people will have a greater understanding of why things happen the way they do. And I want to just put my little pebble towards that huge mountain that has to be conquered in a few years from now. So that's my speech. I'm off my soapbox. Let's look at the rituals index. This is a post that was made a long time ago. This is, let's see, thread archive. What is the date? Years and years, and it was made by somebody. Wing Angel. Oh, here it is. 3 years ago. Wing Angel. I didn't ask him to do it. He just decided that it would be helpful to create it, and he started writing the ritual, and he started writing all of the experiences that he could find for that ritual, and eventually he just ran out of space because Reddit has up. It only has so much room to type in it. So these stopped being updated, I would say, I don't know, a few years ago. And then we had a second one, and then that one also ran out of space. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to start to grab a few of them one at a time. And
Sounds
maybe
like it's time for us to build a wiki or something
yeah,
for
thank you for bringing that up. Let's look at that. So we had a friend of the subreddit who, again, I mean, this is people. I never ask anyone to do anything. They just do things, and they created a wiki. How do I reach the wiki here? I'm logged out. So does that mean I have to be logged in to see the wiki? Feels like the sort of thing I should have checked ahead of time. Uh, well, dang it. If you are logged in, you will see a wiki, and that wiki has a lot of experiences also that have been added. So yeah, so let's take a few and let's criticize them. So I'm gonna start with criticizing myself. So I'm gonna do the shoebox telephone. This is something that I posted, and apparently it's been done a few times. The other one has a few others more. And the idea behind the shoebox telephone is something that I observed some people doing, where they wanted to have a conversation with an entity that typically you would not get a conversation with. So basically, the way it works. Okay, so let's see some background. While I will contribute some details, the game has already been played by many in Juby. Before I arrived there, you have to understand it wasn't uncommon for these kids to be missing one or both parents. So I speculate that doing this maybe brought some measure of comfort or relief to them, although a few times it made things a lot worse. In any case, the purpose of this post, I will switch to my believer hat. Stop theorizing the psychological reasons why this works. Well, that's the opposite of what I'm going to do in this podcast. I'm going to switch to my skeptic hat and theorize all of the psychological reasons why this works. But first, let's talk about it. What is the shoebox telephone? So, here's what you need the phone booth, which is meant to be any dark place where you don't get a lot of sensory interference. So, closets work because you close the closet and you don't know how big it is, it's just dark. Might be 100 miles, might be a telephone booth. A handset, a paper cup. That's We're gonna build the basic phone that we used to make as children with a little string between them. Your telephone box is the titular shoebox. A shoe box is about the right size for the kind of things that you will store in there. Telephone wire, just a regular string. 2 to 4 feet. Scissors, important. You're gonna see why. A strong object of power to power the telephone box with. It must have a personal connection to whoever you're trying to talk to. This is very important. And then a single sheet of paper and a pen because you're gonna mail a letter, right? So the way it works, as you can see, the whole theme of this is telephony, right? There is a phone booth, there is a handset, there is a telephone, there's a wire, and part of the reason, if I put my psychology hat on, is because if things have a theme to it, then tropes that apply to the theme start to generalize to the sort of thing that you're doing, and it
Hey, we
makes.
in the Discord we got a post to the wiki.
Oh, thank you, friendly Discord person, Hellebank. I appreciate this. Let's see if I can copy that link and just put it over here. Greatly appreciated, Telebank friend. So again, this wiki is again a player, a player. Sorry, a user of the subreddit created it. Is part of the community. It's very helpful. He's tagging things in categories. So yeah, we'll come back to that. So anyway, so we were saying shoebox telephone follows a theme. Theme is useful for generalizing rules, and rules are useful for understanding the big picture, right? If you understand that this is all about telephony, then there are certain things that become implied, and there are certain patterns that sort of come built in that help you just sell the whole thing inside your head, right? So what is the setup? The outbound call. So wait for the end of your day right before bedtime. I want to stop right here. Why? Because it's been proven that what you're going to see later on is that this is very heavily based on dreams. And I think it's proven that many of the last things you do while you are awake have a higher percentage to make it into your dream, right? The last thing you were thinking of. So wait until right before bedtime. That's another way of saying wait right before you're about to dream and go to sleep. Everything that you were going to do that day is either done or is not, but for now out of the picture and out of your mind, right? I want people to concentrate on what they're about to do and sort of like impress themselves in their own heads. For now, it's just you in the night, just you and your thoughts alone in your room. Don't turn off the lights, but do turn off your cell phone, your TV, your stereo, radio, computer, etc. Basically, this means no distractions. You want zero distractions, absolutely no interruptions. You want quiet. Then just wait for the right time. What is the right time? The right time is where you're gonna psych yourself out to believe that is the right time. You're gonna feel it, and something that we've been saying over and over in all these shows is that belief plays this critical role on having the ritual work or not work. And waiting for a time where you feel it's going to work is going to help you build that belief and it's going to make it work. So it's one of those things that are hard to describe, but you just know it when you see it. You'll just know. Correct? That's belief. It may build up gradually, but when it's finally there, it'll hit you, zeroed out. Only at this point may you begin writing your letter. If this threshold of certainty never comes within an hour, Just go to sleep and try again the next night, because it wouldn't work, right? If you don't believe enough that it's gonna work, and if you feel insecure and hesitant, then you don't have enough conviction, and it's just nothing's gonna happen. All right, if you've been trying for 3 or 4 nights already and the moment just never comes, then it may simply be that you're not ready for this. That's okay. Try a different person, give yourself a break for a few nights. What you don't want to do is to write your letter while in doubt. That'd be a wrong number, right? So back to the analogy of telephony, right? So what is a wrong number? It means that you wrote something while you were in a state of ambiguity or doubt, and you thought that you were trying to communicate with, I don't know, some figure you actually want to talk to, but you're not 100% sure, and that is going to increase the chances of weird things happening, because, like I said, if your belief is that you may not be talking to who you think you're talking to, then that belief becomes self-fulfilling also, right? So important. All right, next. When you do begin writing, don't erase nor correct any mistakes you make. This includes scrolling words over. Don't. The purpose of this is to get your stream of consciousness out. We want you to get as raw as possible to the id, right? It's under the ego. We want to get very primal if we can, right? We want to go to a deep level where your thoughts are just a stream of consciousness and you are not judging them or editing them or attaching some value to them. They're just flowing out. They exist by themselves. They just are. You just are, and you correct nothing. So don't start over either. You only have a single sheet of paper, and your first draft is your final draft, is ink. Explain to this person why they should give you a ring. Be honest. My personal advice, let it all out. It's not always easy. Don't overthink it. Just write. This is why you had to wait for the right time. It'll all make sense. Again, doubt equals wrong number. Never dial a wrong number. It's best to abort the whole thing. Right? So at this point, you have been waiting probably a few days, and then tonight you have been waiting for the right moment. You are free of interruptions. You're in a state of mental health that is very narrowly focused. And during this state of mental focus, we want to get down at your stream of consciousness level. Right? So you're going to write something that is going to be very, very personal and very deep and very intimate to who you are as a person. So when you're done, tie one end of the string. So here begins the ceremony, right? This is just ceremony that's going to help you believe. When you're done, tie one end of the string to the power object, and using a needle, insert the other end through the center of the bottom of your paper cup. This is just instructions on how to build a basic telephone like children do. Remove the needle, tie a little knot, and now you have a cute little paper telephone like you probably once made while you were a child. The second reason why we do this is because now that we attack the subconscious in multiple ways, we want to distract the conscious with a menial task to let the subconscious sort of ferment, and sort of do its own thing away from you because you're busy with arts and crafts, basically. So don't prepare this ahead of time exactly before your letter. Write a letter first, then do the paper cup because that letter needs to marinate inside your head while you are distracted with your little scissors and your little wire. All right, read your letter aloud into the paper cup. So that brings it back to the foreground, and it's also ceremony, right? You're also just going with this theme of telephony. Read it sincerely, as if the person at the other end could hear you, including all the mistakes you didn't correct. Just read them. This is your outbound call. So again, you are right before going to bed to sleep, and you have just done something that is emotionally significant and it is tied to a lower level of your ego. Place the object and letter. Oh, we didn't talk about the object. What is? Did I skip it? The object is supposed to be something important. Okay, here it is. Some strong object to power the telephone must have a personal connection to whomever you're tracking to. So this is just trying to increase the sense of belief. And this is just saying, okay, it's not only this letter to, I don't know, my grandfather, but it's also his favorite pen or his reading glasses or whatever. Something that means something to you. Place the object and letter in your shoebox. Place the shoebox on the floor of your phone booth, which is the closet, this dark place. Close the box, but don't seal it because we're going to have to leave it open later. Just let the lid rest there gently with the string still coming out from under and going to your paper cup. Leave the paper cup standing on top of the box. Leave the scissors on the floor next to the box just for convenience because you're going to need them. Now you're done. Now all that's left is wait for the ring. So the ring is a dream, right? So showtime, the inbound call. The ring will come in a dream, either that night or some night shortly after. If you have done enough or good enough work psyching yourself out for this, then it's very likely that you're going to dream about it. So you will dream of the person trying to call you, and you will wake up from that dream, usually in the middle of the night, and you will know it's time to take the call. So this is why it's very important that we avoid the wrong numbers, because if at any point during this psyching up process you thought that maybe this was not going to go to the person that you wanted it to go, then that's what you're going to dream, and things are going to get pretty nasty, and you can read some of the experiences of wrong calls and what they are. All right, don't turn on the light, because we don't want you to rouse you to a fully awake state. We want you in that half sleepy, half awake state, that you just woke up from the middle of a dream, and part of your brain is maybe just slowly getting out of dream mode. Don't say a word. Just get up from the bed and go to your phone booth. Is the box still closed with the paper cup standing on top? Most likely, yes, unless you have a draft in the house. Obviously, the possibility is that there are spoopy, scary skeletons that mess with it, in which case you should abort immediately because you have bigger problems than a telephone box. Uh,
Spooky, spooky skeleton.
exactly. Good. Get in the closet, sit down, and slide the door closed. A closed boot is particularly important in case the rain comes after sunrise, because you'll need the darkness, because you don't want any of your five senses getting input from the real world outside. You want the five senses to be getting input from within, from what's going on in your head that is being influenced by the dream. If you find the box open, or if you find the paper cup knocked over, abort the mission, right as I was saying, a snap of the string. Don't take the headset anywhere near your ear. Use the scissors. So, ceremony, right? Why? Because we use ceremony to build up the belief that something was going to happen. And if something potentially negative is about to happen, then we also need ceremony to abort it and to undo it, right? So whatever level of belief you gain from doing these preparations needs to be equal or below the level of belief that you get from following the abort ceremony, and that's just going to give you peace of mind, right? All right. Otherwise, just sit on the floor there and press the paper cup to your ear and cover your other ear with your other hand. This will help you listen. If you ever do this outside of a ritual, right? Just grab any glass. Just grab any small object with a small empty space, press it to your ear and cover your other ear. You're obviously going to hear a little noise, right? That's why seashells in the beach sound like the ocean when you put them to your ear, because it just has that effect. And we want that effect because what we want here is white noise, right? White noise, you can also get it if you turn on a television to a channel that's not there, and it just goes,
So this
right?
works like EVP. You're essentially recording through white
Yes,
noise.
exactly, right? And why do we need that? Because I think it's much harder for the brain to make something out of nothing that makes something into something else, right? If you are in
It's
absolute,
like a channel, like a not a vessel, but it's a route. By opening up the white noise, you can hear noise through it, and that allows you to connect.
100%, 100%. Like if you are in absolute silence, right? Like nothing, and suddenly you hear, "Hey, Dapper!" Holy shit, right? Something's going on. Very less likely to happen unless there is actually a spooky scary skeleton. Whereas if you're hearing, then part of that sounds like a hey, right? And then remember, you're in a state where you just woke up. You were dreaming literally moments ago, and you are super psyched for hearing things, and then you give yourself the white noise to hear those things, and you are in a dark environment where no other sensory input is competing with you, then you'll hear stuff, right? It may take a while. You may not speak because that will ruin the illusion, frankly. If you put your own actual voice in there, sort of like the white noise loses power and it starts sounding like speech. Don't move too much for the same reason, right? We don't want distractions. Keep covering one ear with one hand and the other with your headset so you don't distract yourself from the white noise. Don't touch the box, ceremony. Some people report an increase in call quality after tugging on the string ever so gently, ceremony. This is fine, but just be careful not to open the box by doing so. Ceremony. All of these things are just to help you believe that you are about to experience something beyond yourself and paranormal. Remember, they're calling collect, so back to the telephony theme. And if it goes through, that shoebox must remain closed for at least a few months. Ceremony. Again, you may not speak, not even if you are asked questions, not even if you're ordered to. You already said your piece at the outbound call. For the inbound one, just listen. Avoid noise. When you're done, or if you want to hang up at any time, simply hold the box lid closed with one hand and pull on the headset with the other hand until the string snaps off. Use the scissors in case of emergency, because strings are surprisingly harder than you might think. They don't snap off as easily as you think. Keep the closed shoebox somewhere safe for a few months. Oh, and remember to dispose of that paper cup later too. Burning is fine, just don't put it to your hair again. Most of this is ceremony, but I think everybody who has been in, I guess, in our show will probably have something to say about these disposal methods.
Well, the string in the cup opens the doorway, and this is a process of making sure you're closing the doorway.
Yep.
Otherwise, you leave it open and you get haunted for years afterwards.
And we have actually heard guests telling us that sort of story. So, yes, important. All right, what if after 3 or 4 nights the ring never comes? Maybe they have nothing to say to you, mostly because you already cooled down, right? The psyching yourself up for a dream and a phone call doesn't last forever. Eventually, life is just going to go back to its ordinary, mundane element. And then you're not going to dream anything crazy and you're not going to go to the closet. So, that's okay. Try another person. Don't do this too often. Disclaimer: this might help you get closure, but it could also make things worse. As with all things that you dig out of the deep recesses of your mind, can go either way. I have my theories about this, just explain them, which actually prove to me at least certain facts in the skeptic versus believer spectrum, but I'll share those after a few experiences, if any, are posted. So this is me keeping my word 7 years later. I'm having some issues posting new comments. The rest is yada yada. My response: contacting God through the shoebox telephone. What? All right, what's this? I do not believe any entity exists that matches God. I'm an atheist. That's true. If entities do exist outside our mind, there is no reason. Okay, so somebody said, "Can you shoebox telephone God?" And I said, well, you can shoebox telephone whatever your mind thinks is God, basically, right? I mean, I've heard of some people in the subreddit. I should probably look for them. They try to shoebox telephone like concepts, like justice, or America, or like it doesn't have to be an actual person, because again, I believe this comes from within your mind, from the inside. And yeah, that is the shoebox telephone recipe. So, Sean, what do you make of all this madness? What are your first thoughts so far?
Oh wow, I got a pile of little notes I wrote down here. One, this is a complicated form of Ouija board. Um, the sensory deprivation, the third eye stuff, is essentially you by pulling the focus away from all your other senses, you open up the third eye into the psychic mind, which is third eye at the front of your head, pineal gland at the back of your head, whatever terms you want to give it.
Right,
You're
right, right,
essentially putting focus into the front and back of your mind. And I noticed that they always like to pick wait until it gets dark, because as you approach the witching hour, which is what, from 12 till 3 in the morning,
right.
you reach the thinnest point in the veil. And this is universal throughout stories, culture, all kinds of legends. This is the time when all the spooky stuff happens.
I see.
I do want to note, do always remember there's apophenia, which is the human pattern recognition system. Apophenia is both good and bad, because apophenia allows us to see patterns, but some of those patterns, much like cloud formations, are only in our head.
Right, right, right,
So
right. That's kind of like what do you call it? EVPs. I'm sure that's not the name.
yes,
Yeah. Right,
much
right,
like
right.
the EVP stuff. And see, Carl Jung talked about the subconsciousness as being this massive, sort of endless ocean. And I believe personally that this massive subconscious is a sort of back door, like where we are all connected to the matrix. We are connected to what's called the zeitgeist, or the culture mind. And this process of depriving our senses allows us to turn inwards back towards the door in the back of our mind, which is why we're able to contact with ghosts and stuff like that. as
I see.
being real, but also being entirely inside of our head, because the back of our mind is sort of how we connect with these things.
Right.
Um, Now, on the science side, the mind filters out details. I don't know if you've ever looked at the science of this, but human beings are bombarded by a overwhelming amount of sensory information. Like how hot it is, the sun coming in, all the objects, what they all mean, and we actually our minds filter out a lot of that data. If we saw all the data incoming, we'd be overwhelmed. So we have to
Right.
pull a focus in, which is how a lot of this stuff gets done in these rituals. As a fun side note, I wrote down that the band The Doors gets their title from the Aldous Huxley book, The Doors of Perception. It's derived from a line in William Blake's The Marriage of Heaven and Hell that if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. We
Wow. Go
we
ahead.
are
Sorry. Yeah.
constantly connected to everything in the universe. We're seeing, we're hearing the things we know about, things, deja vu, past lives that keep coming up in these stories. It's like people are connected through the back of their head to this endless universal culture of civilization spanning back, endless amounts of time. And I believe that these kind of processes, these rituals, are going into the back of our mind and connecting over to this other side. I don't think you ever got around to reading Alan Moore's Promethea, did you?
No, I know who Alan Moore is, but I never
So
read Promethea.
Prometheus is essentially a bunch of like real ritual stuff done by organizations, kind of boiled down into comic book form to teach you about like tarot and Kabbalah and like all kinds of cool concepts. But one of the major features is that in the physical world, the people are just relatively normal. I mean, they're superheroes and everything. It's a comic book, but the main character summons an archetype through the other side, which is Promethea, and she becomes like this super. It's kind of like Shazam, She becomes this massive superhero, but in the process, they talk about the same kind of stuff the Shadow Side material talked
Yes,
about.
that's what I was thinking of.
That is that she goes inside of her mind and she's able to access from inside her brain an inner journey, which is the Kabbalah map of the Tree of Life, and it's actually he talks about it as a route into the universal subconsciousness, and in the universal subconsciousness all fiction and ghosts and the dead and possibility and potential exists. The deeper you get, the more, or not deeper, the higher you get
Yeah.
up the Tree of Life, the more abstract it becomes, because you go. So I know I'm completely off tangent
No,
here. I
I
could go
love this,
forever and ever.
dude. I am
uh
so glad. Please continue.
so if you combine all the mythologies and history and everything together, you always, all the legends start with there's unity in the universe. Like before the Big Bang, there's just nothing, or there's something. Whatever it is splits itself into two, and those two are always a form of chaos and order, good and evil,
Right.
whatever.
So duality. Yeah,
And
yeah.
right. And then the two always breaks down into a trinity, and you have trinities, and the trinity breaks down into 10,000 things. That gets into Eastern philosophies, the idea of the 10,000 things. And that is that if you go to like India and you look at the ideas of
Yeah.
the Godhead and stuff, there's this philosophy in the Godhead that we are all playing a massive stage production, like theater, and the God itself, or the universe or whatever, is bored with just being a single thing, so it splits itself into these actors on a stage. And they I think this was oh god, who's the guy with the really soft voice? Alan Wake? No,
Uh.
the philosopher who
Oh.
did like Taoism and Buddhism, and he talks like this. Anyways, I can't remember off the tip of my
It's in
tongue,
the
but he
tip of my
talked.
tongue. Alan Watts.
Alan Watts. Alan Watts talks about how if a Christian had talked to the old Hindu or one of these other various East religions, they would laugh about the idea that the God had put on this mask and been one single God, or that we had all put on masks and pretend we're separate from God. but essentially it's this one universe splitting itself into two and then three, and that pattern system is the golden ratio. And so the
Phew.
breakdown of the one being of the golden ratio creates 10,000 things. These 10,000 things are all connected through this like primal zeitgeist void outside of time or whatever. And that's what connects all of these aspects together.
Let me see if I can backtrack. Probably I can't, but you will help me. So, Alan Watts is posturing this. I want to use the wrong word, but it reminds me of a multiverse, right? It reminds me of endless variations of a theme, which we identify with divinity, but it's actually us, right?
Well,
And
if you break it down to pure science and you just like no religion, just pure atheist,
yeah,
pure science, the
yeah,
Big Bang happens. What happens after the Big Bang? It spreads into multiple parts, right?
right,
The energy and mass fling itself through the universe and break apart and break apart. And we're essentially, we describe ourselves, a lot of people describe themselves as stardust, just
I've heard that.
pockets of the origin of the Big Bang of the universe, billions and billions and billions of years ahead. These objects are flinging through space, and we are a bunch of people on a planet. So
Right, right,
on
right.
our
It's universe experiencing itself. I heard someone say.
right. So on a time, if you go on a long enough timeline, if you look at the timeline from far enough away, it's one thing. And as it goes more and more, and if you get closer in depth to the timeline, to the very from centuries to decades to years to minutes to seconds to milliseconds, you're zooming in on this fracturing process of the universe pulling itself apart into pieces
Right,
and reforming into those pieces.
it's like a
So
fractal.
even at a scientific level, the Big Bang Theory splitting into the 10,000 things is still a valid concept.
Jesus
Just
Christ.
people project this religious process of that original thing before the Big Bang is the essence of Godhead or whatever it is, and we're all just sort of playing roles. We're putting on masks. We're being people, and the Alan Moore stuff with Prometheus, that this
Yeah,
Kabbalah tree of life is a way to get back towards the source. Now, I don't know if you say it's back through time, because outside of time, the subconscious is eternal. There's like a timelessness, because creativity, ideas, memories, deja vu, seeing the future, seeing the past, these kind of stories you get from psychic or paranormal activities, is this connection back through this universal vast ocean of human togetherness that was formed at the Big Bang.
Sean, you're blowing my mind. Which you do every single weekend. I'm slowly getting used to it. Let me
I'm
let
just connecting pieces like a
No, it's look. That's why this is a great show. Let me make a small parenthesis, just a tiny island in this ocean of knowledge, because I seem to remember that Alan Moore claimed he met John Constantine once in a bar.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. Oh,
Did Alan Moore
yes.
really meet Constantine?
Well, I don't know if you ever heard the story of Grant Morrison tried. His Invisibles comic book was a giant hyper sigil to like change his life or whatever.
Here
But
it
there was
is.
this interview where Grant Morrison said he tried to make the DC universe of comics conscious, give it a actual like sentient mind. And he was trying for years to awaken the comic book world into its own entity.
Wow.
Like, what was it we talked about the other day? The minds, they're like tulpas, but they're
Right, right.
larger. What's the term?
Egregores and
Yeah,
servitors.
Edgors or whatever. So
Yeah.
he tried to essentially create an Aragorn out of not like a super Aragorn, out of the DC universe. And later he was asked if he succeeded, and he said he did, but that the universe preferred another writer over him.
That is so funny. That is so
So
funny.
I don't know.
For
Alan
everyone
Moore
who
and Grant Morrison.
doesn't know, right? So John Constantine, he's a character. He's a comic book character. He was in a series called Hellblazer, and then they made him into TV series, and Keanu Reeves played him in the movies, right? So he's a character, right? And Alan Moore, in other interviews, has said that he sort of loosely based the John Constantine character on Sting, the musician, right? Who used to be lead singer for the Police. That Sting. and
Ah,
and
so you just met Sting in a bar.
yeah, and it's very interesting. By the way, every time I hear a few songs from Sting, I do think of John Constantine, but probably that's because I read that. So, interestingly, so this is Alan Moore speaking. He says, one interesting anecdote that I should point out is that one day I was in Westminster in London. This was after we had introduced the character, so John Constantine, and I was sitting in a sandwich bar. All of a sudden, off the stairs came John Constantine. He was wearing the trench coat, a short cut. He looked, no, he didn't even look exactly like Sting. He looked exactly like John Constantine. He looked at me, stared me straight in the eyes, smiled, nodded almost conspiratorially, and then just walked off around the corner to the other part of the snack bar. I sat there and thought, should I go around that corner and see if he's really there, or should I just eat my sandwich and leave? I opted for the latter. I thought it was the safest. I'm not making any claims to anything. I'm just saying that it happened. Strange little story. Alan Moore,
You know,
ladies and gentlemen. Alan
that's
Moore.
Occam's razor. He could have hallucinated, and it also could have been a cosplayer who was messing with him. You never know.
Well, it's too soon though. It's too soon. So one of the this was right after he started Hellblazer. So one of the things that we've been always saying, belief makes things reality, and belief. If there was really, if it really did work that way, right? Then the cultural impact that you get from Hollywood potentially is shaping reality, right? And I don't mean it in the sense that we're gonna see the Incredible Hulk, all green and just running down the street pushing cars, but we're gonna see his values, right? And we're gonna see the values of Captain America, and whatever Iron Man thinks it's okay, a lot of people are gonna think it's okay, and it's
Well,
gonna
if you
have to
go with
start an impact on the ethics. Yeah, go ahead.
the Joseph Campbell archetypes hero of the Thousand Faces thing, is that we're essentially bringing these centralized archetypes, because all heroes boil down to like a kind of archetype that's not a person so much as it's a concept of an elevated what we should like. Superman and Captain America are our best selves. It's like, what if we are the
Yeah,
best version of us?
yeah, it's a
So
super ego, right?
we're all
And
channeling these very common across all cultures archetypes.
exactly. And it becomes accepted, and it becomes aspirational, and it becomes a role model, and it becomes reality because of that, right? So did Alan Moore actually see John Constantine? Who the hell knows? Maybe. I mean, maybe so many people read the comic book and they power this belief. That's the funny thing about this. Like, do people? Let me bring it back to the shoebox telephone. Do people actually talk to dead loved ones or entities, or like? I mean, they say they do, and they feel like they do, and maybe the belief makes it like functionally or virtually they do. So yeah, I mean, belief is an important thing in our world, and I wish somebody studied those kind of things, right? So let me see if I can trace it back. I don't think I can, but we'll try to trace it back. So Alan Moore came up because of Prometheus. Prometheus came up because of the getting into the tree of life and getting sort of like into this world of fiction, but that is not fiction if you believe in it enough, right? And I think we were talking about it because we were saying that the mind is sort of discriminatory in the things that it wants to accept as reality versus make reality via belief. So that's when we were talking about apophenia. I have the browser open, and you were talking about sensory gating, right? How we get all these different flood of data through our eyes and ears and nose, etc., and the brain has to decide which one matters. And if that brain is sleepy because it's 3 a.m. and you put just a paper cup on your ear, then maybe it'll discriminate wrongly, and it'll let you listen to things that you actually want to listen. Which, by the way, happens usually 90 minutes after you fall asleep, right? So in a perfect scenario, you stayed up for hours writing that letter, you put your heart in it, right? You really believe it. Then you went to bed. 90 minutes happen. You had a powerful dream. You wake up. It's probably 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. witching hour. Get in the closet and take the call, right? And pineal gland is what you were saying, the third eye, right at the back of the head. So it's been
Yeah, it's a lot of people talk about the third eye and then they talk about the pineal gland. Whether or not that's real or true, they're essentially talking about the front door and back door, because through the third eye people see forward, through the pineal gland people seem to see backwards.
Interesting. Oh, interesting. Okay, that's worth pointing out, and that is the shoebox telephone. So the last thing that I was going to point out about this, Sean, is what I said here at the beginning. So I contributed some details. This game was already being played, before I arrived there. So trial and error, right? And I wonder how did
Yep.
this whole thing started.
Well, I,
Someone,
I laid out a bunch of excess stuff that we didn't essentially need, but what it helps paint for my analogy is that this game and a lot of the games we do here, like Three Kings,
yeah,
are all of them focus on opening that doorway and being able to connect with some other force or energy or source or area.
right,
And these are processes. This ritual here, you're basically essentially setting up a doorway, and
yeah.
the object in the box helps direct where that portal goes, and then you connect through it, and then you have to at the end disconnect that doorway and seal the door shut. Otherwise, it stays open and stuff starts to pour into your mind.
So, Sean, so let me ask you something. I don't know if this is a good question or a bad question. Uh, do you, having experienced this whole, not experienced, heard about this whole ritual, right? Do you lean more towards the paranormal explanation, or do you lean more towards the skeptic, purely psychological explanation, or maybe somewhere in the middle? What is your take?
I think at a baseline, I'd go with skepticism. A lot of it is hypnosis. It's a form of self hypnosis. You're essentially
Yeah,
convincing yourself of things. But I do believe it is entirely possible, the amount of stories I've heard like this and people's experiences,
yeah.
that you can actually open doorways, that you can get other stuff that is not you, something that is ghostly or paranormal, can find its way through those cracks. One of the good examples with Ouija board you hear a lot is that
Yeah.
people are looking for specific souls on a Ouija board. And a lot of times, what will happen with Ouija boards is that you will get something else pretending to be what you want. So,
Ah,
these calls, you could be just talking to your own mind and making up a voice. You could be talking to the subject that you're directed towards with the object in the box, but it is also very likely that this thing could allow you to talk to other entities because there are enough stories of other entities out there that are not part of us.
interesting.
So I think it's possible, but the problem is because a lot of this is through the back of your own mind of doing it through a mental state, like psychic stuff and paranormal stuff go hand in hand in a lot of stories, is that you can't replicate this into science because nobody can see what's in the inside of your head.
I completely I hear you. And as I was scrolling down towards these comments, I mean, if somebody's watching the screen, I found a comment that made me stop. So I first created a subreddit. I posted Three Kings, and that was the first one. Then I posted Shoebox Telephone. That was the second one. I was gonna go with the third one about wrapping people up. Never did because of this comment 7 years ago. Check it out. It says, "Someone please help me. It's a really long story, but the ghost I talked to wasn't friendly, and he said something that made me whisper, 'What?' Then he started laughing. My ears started tingling, and I cut the cord in 4 different places. This is 2 days later. I still hear the laughing. I can't stop hearing it. It's everywhere. Sleep is no help. I think it possessed me. My friend said that I have such a strong will that Satan himself could possess me, and I wouldn't let him control me. But whatever is in my head is. Right now, I am struggling to type. Please help. I need a recipe to try and exorcise whatever is inside my head. Please, it will make me do things. I may kill people or myself. Help." 7 years ago. And my reply to this guy, assuming he's not a troll, go to the ER at your nearest hospital. That's what I said. And that's where it ended. I mean, continue this thread. Did I say anything else? Apparently not. He's not a
As
troll.
much as I like Reddit and as much as I like community help online, sometimes you just need to go to a professional,
I
a
told him
real life
just go to the
professional.
ER. So just for curiosity, right? I just click on this guy's username. I mean, and remember, he posted 7 years ago that he might kill himself or others. So what happened to him? And his last post was 5 years ago. And apparently, is this still Three Kings? Yes, it is. I think it is still Three Kings. I mean, do you have to play the game? How do I do this? Recipe. Oh crap, they deleted it. Interesting. And then before he was playing Doors to the Mind. That was 5 years ago. And Doors to the Mind, he was doing solo experiences.
If you go back up there, it said something about taking control. Back up at the previous one.
Ba, ba, ba,
I
ba.
tried again, almost 20. This time I didn't go by control it. So I was the same quarter and even the tape had stopped. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe
Oh,
he's
this one.
possessed. Maybe he got rid of it.
So
Hmm.
interesting, right? So 7 years he tries telephone shoebox, goes a little cray cray. 2 years
Well, if
later,
I like trains wants to come on the show and talk about it, we'd love to
I
have
would
him.
appreciate that very much. I feel personally responsible, even though I shouldn't. Oh look, he's talking about himself. He's a vegan atheist. Interesting. Uh, so yeah, I certainly hope that nothing bad actually happened to this gentleman, and uh, and yeah, he hasn't posted in 5 years. So God knows. But that was the comment that made me stop. I just figured I would point it out since I read it and it reminded me, and that's where I said, maybe I shouldn't have done this. So
There's nothing wrong with trying to seek out an exorcist or some sort of paranormal expert who can try to exorcise whatever it is.
just help,
Remember, you don't
you
want to
know.
mess with this stuff
I-
alone.
If you're out of your depth, seek help. Seek help. A lot of the people that I saw do this, I'll be honest. I mean, it sounds spooky here, but they just did it for the thrill. They just wanted, a cool experience. Like, oh my God, he's actually talking to me, and it's just a paper cup. Uh, there was a minority of people who actually took it seriously, and like with everything that comes from inside your mind, that can go.
It's definitely a big problem, and it's the same thing way I feel about hallucinogenics or psychedelics. Is
Yeah,
it's not a toy to be messed with. It is something that can do some serious results, either good or bad, depending on what you're doing with it. And if you don't know what you're doing, it can burn you.
important, right? Very important. And I put that somewhere in the sidebar. This I hate this Reddit. It doesn't show sidebars, but
It's why I don't do a lot of these rituals because I don't want to mess with it. I know that there are doorways you should not open.
100%, I don't do them either. That's absolutely right. Right. So, all right, Sean, we're gonna keep this short and sweet. So, this episode we talked about shoebox telephone. Next episode, unless we have a guest, and if you are interested in becoming a guest in our show, please send me a message. We have had wonderful guests so far. We've been very, very lucky with the quality of guests that we have received. So, reach out if you would like to talk to us. You don't have to be a luminary, or you don't have to have something super
But if you
special.
are in the Illuminati, please come on.
Yeah, right, right. Give us all the codes. All we need is that you are willing to have an open-minded conversation about paranormal topics. If you are skeptic, you're still very welcome, right? In fact, you're even more welcome. I would love to talk to a skeptic about all this crazy stuff. If we have no guest, then next week we're gonna do the same thing that we did for Shoebox Telephone, which is sort of analyze it and try to not debunk it. Debunk is not the right word. Try to understand it from a psychological point of view or from a secular point of view, right? Trying to leave the paranormal as a last resource explanation. We're going to do the same thing for this ritual called Doors to Your Mind, which, as you can see, massively popular. And if you go to the Three Kings subreddit, is right now the red door, yellow door subreddit, right? Like a lot of this stuff here is RDYD, which is in my mind is an offshoot of Doors to Your Mind. So that's what's gonna happen next week. Make sure to tune in. Dapper, any last thoughts that you want to say to anybody listening?
Yeah, I just like to say for the comfort of most people, my long-winded rants that I think I covered a bulk of my foundation in this episode, and in future episodes, we put a pin in this and not have to repeat that information. I'll just assume people understand what I said here.
And probably will not. Everybody, look for Dapper's books in Amazon.
Oh,
I have it on the screen right now. good stuff, gentlemen. This he makes good stuff. What is the one with the cover I made, Sean? With the one with the clocks? Not here.
Oh no, that book went down. It's being rewritten. It's going to go back
Oh,
up
okay.
sometime later this year,
I'm proud I
hopefully.
made a cover for one of yours.
Well, my
So
next book I'm putting out is an anthology of short stories, and they're all really weird horror occult short stories. I don't know. I don't like to advertise,
I
which
do.
makes me bad as a
I do because
businessman.
you
So
are. I mean, Sean, you didn't ask me to do this. I'm doing it on my own. You are the person that I know who has the most knowledge of everything. It's like your mind is just this sponge that things get in, and they just get stuck in there. And if you were in within 50 feet of somebody saying something, you can probably remember it, and it's stuck with you.
I don't leave the library enough. That's the problem.
That I just find it amazing. I very admirable. Thank you so much for being my co-host, and thanks
Thank
everybody
you.
for listening. I hope you enjoy the show, and I'll see you guys next week. Have fun, stay safe. Bye bye.
Well, that was a lot of fun.